Good evening. It's nice to see such a good crowd out here this evening. And it's been a lovely day, so it's a great night to do this. Welcome to Talk20 MHK. I'm Linda Tiener. I'm the director at UFM Community Learning Center and one of the co-sponsors of this event. Talk20 MHK is a collaboration between UFM Community Learning Center and the Manhattan Public Library. And this is the second time we've offered an event of this sort. The goal of Talk20 MHK is to build strong community connections by giving individuals a platform to share their knowledge, stories, and skills with others in the community. I think we have an interesting assortment of speakers for you tonight, and our format is going to be that each speaker will have 20 slides, which go 20 seconds a slide, to talk about their topic. It's about a total of 7 minutes for each one, and we have 6 speakers with us tonight. After all the presentations are over, then we will have an opportunity for questions. So think about questions you might have as they're speaking, and then when it's over, they will face the audience, and you can ask questions of them. We do ask that you speak into the microphone because this is being recorded, and we have some online viewers as well, and we want to make sure that they can hear the same as those of us that are in the room. Just a couple of housekeeping things. First off, turn your cell phones to silent, please. Restrooms are outside that door and around the left. We talked about the questions after all the presentations are over. And then following that, we have refreshments that are being provided to us by the Manhattan Library Association. So please stay for some refreshments, some conversations among yourselves, and also some private time to visit with the speakers. So with that, I think we're going to get started. First up tonight, First up tonight is Nikki Bowman. She's going to be sharing her passion about beekeeping. Nikki Bowman is a registered nurse, I think I'm supposed to talk into this, turned full-time beekeeper. She teaches and mentors beekeepers throughout the Manhattan area and works full-time in a beekeeping equipment shop. Who knew? I didn't know there was a beekeeping equipment shop. She currently has 15 beehives and knows many odd facts about honeybees. Nikki Bowman, come on down.
Okay. Bees. Bees have been in the news a lot lately. They're important pollinators that are facing many challenges. But tonight, in just 6 minutes, I'm going to explain how bees work, turning elements of flowers into honey. Now, we have 3 castes of bees, the queen, the male drone, and the female worker. So we have the queen. The whole colony depends on her. She's the only bee who lays eggs, and so without her, the whole colony wouldn't survive. When a new queen emerges from her cell, she'll take a flight to mate with 15 to 20 drones. She'll return to the hive and be fertilized for life. She can lay 1,500 eggs a day in the summer. Her body carries her eggs and the sperm separately, so each egg that she lays, she chooses whether it's going to be fertilized and be a female bee or unfertilized and be a male drone. All eggs hatch into a larva in 3 days, and that larva is fed royal jelly, which is produced by the worker bees. They also feed them pollen and honey. Then on day 10, the cell is capped, and when the pupa is mature, the young bees will chew their way out of the cap and get to join the colony. The next caste is the male drone. Drones have one purpose, and that is to find a virgin queen out on that mating flight of hers. The lucky drone will die in the process of mating with her as his genitals burst at that special moment. Lucky guy. And then there's the female worker bee. Other than laying eggs, she really does all the work. As the new worker ages, they take on various responsibilities in the hive, such as taking care of the babies, tending the queen, cleaning the hive, and then guarding the hive and trying to sting you in the face. Once the workers are about 22 days old, they become foraging bees going out to visit the flowers. They'll travel up to 2 miles to collect nectar and pollen from the flowers. Then they'll load up a special stomach called a honey crop with the nectar, and that eventually becomes honey. And they'll gather pollen they'll get covered on their bodies, they'll gather it up and put it in those little pouches to carry it. Their bodies can perform various tasks. They have a gland that creates the royal jelly to feed their babies. On their abdomen, they have glands that can create wax at a certain age so they can build honeycomb. And so us humans try to use all this for our own advantage. We stick them in these boxes. They were developed in 1858 by Reverend Langstroth. He found that they always like to have 3/8 of an inch space anywhere they have. So he designed the standard hive that we use today that has movable frames so we can take them out to look at the bees and gather the honey without disturbing them. In Kansas, with our extreme weather, we usually put them in 2 deep brood boxes where the bees can store their nectar and pollen, and also that the queen can lay her eggs in the protected frames in the center. There we go. Here's a typical brood frame. We have the queen up at the top center. There's brood at various stages of development. The workers are trying to keep everything clean. They're feeding those babies. They're storing food, and they keep everything at the correct temperature, which is about 95 to 97 degrees. If they start to get cold, they'll cluster up and keep everybody warm by shivering. If it gets too hot, they'll spread out and fan their wings to cool it off. Once those 2 brood boxes are full of bees, then we've hit spring in Kansas, and there's plenty of nectar. So us beekeepers, we had extra boxes on the top for them to store that nectar into. Each of those boxes can hold about 2.5 gallons of honey and weigh about 40 pounds. The foraging bees bring back the nectar. They pass it to each other. The house bees take it up and put it in the honey supers, each time adding some enzymes to it. They'll fan it to remove the excess water, concentrating it into honey. And then when it's ready to go, they'll put a wax cap over it. It takes 12 bees a lifetime to make 1 teaspoon of honey. When the honey frames are completely capped, that's our cue to take it from them. In central Kansas, that's usually early July. The tricky part is getting all the bees off of their liquid gold. They usually attack the face first, so that's why you'll see beekeepers will always cover their face. They sting you, it hurts, but they die. So we bring the honey frames indoors because if you leave a door open or have a hole in your screen, it takes 1 bee to come in, find where you are, go back out, do your little dance, tell all of her sisters, and they will all show up. So we always harvest our honey someplace that's protected and easy to clean because 1 drop of honey on the floor can go a long way. Extracting the honey is very simple. We cut the wax off the top, usually with a big serrated knife. Then we spin the honey out of the comb, and the wax caps drop off into a bucket. We can save that wax, clean it off, and use it for other things like candles and soaps. Once those caps are off, this is the extractor that we put those open frames in. We spin it around like an old ice cream crank about 1 minute, turn them over, spin it on the other side, and all the honey will dribble down to the bottom. It takes about 1 minute per side. And then when that extractor fills with honey on the bottom, then we drain out the fresh honey, and it's ready to go. Nothing else needs to happen to it. But usually it has little small pieces of wax from our cutting, so most of us will filter it. Most of us do a coarse filter where we're just removing the wax. The commercial places can get a really fine filter that gets out the pollen as well, but most of us don't like to do that. So we put it through a filter, then it's ready to go in the bottles. If you keep it in an airtight bottle, honey will never go bad. As long as that moisture content is down to begin with and you don't add more water to it, the yeast that are naturally in it will not ferment. That's the only way that honey can go bad. It'll crystallize in the winter, but that's just fine. Warm it up and it'll be good. In a good year, 1 hive can produce 60 to 120 pounds of honey, which is about 5 to 10 gallons of honey in 1 established hive. And that is a very quick, simplified overview of how these amazing insects bless us by visiting our flowers and turning it into sweet dessert for us. Thank you. Kinda.
Thanks, Nikki. Now I will find where Josh went. There was Palma. The mouse doesn't want to go over to you, Josh. I'm sorry. There we go. No, it's... See, I click on Josh, and I get Palma every time. Oh, I bet it's at the end, huh?
Oh, yeah, that's
It's at the end, and so we need to click at that.
See if we just do the presentation.
Oh, it starts. Okay. Okay. All right. Our next speaker tonight is Josh Hicks. He's going to share thoughts on community building. Josh is a community-driven entrepreneur who thrives on bringing people together. He was born in Salina, Kansas, and attended a small rural school. He started his current photography business at age 16 and most recently launched Manhattan's first shared workspace, the Fellow Co-working. He started that in 2016. Josh and his wife, Shelby, work together in both of those businesses. Josh has always enjoyed building things like woodworking projects, custom antler lamps. Yours is the hardest one to say of the whole group. And even a dirt racetrack for his bicycles when he was in 8th grade. Now at age 25, he's focused on a different kind of building. To Josh, community building can look like a group of 40 aspiring photographers or 40 people working, doing their daily jobs in one building. The newest community he's working on is the Prairie Society, which is a creative community of diverse artists. So let's welcome Josh Hicks.
All right. My favorite definition of the term community is a group of people that care about each other and feel that they belong together. I believe once you've experienced this kind of community that you won't forget it and that you'll realize how much community can enrich your life. This definition and feeling of community is what drives my passion for community building. You might be asking, what is community building? Is that a real thing? And can that be a passion? Community building is simply bringing like-minded people together. They can have shared passions or interests, and it can look like this, a big crazy group. And at its core, most community building is best achieved organically and done over time. And no, it's not that easy, but it's totally worth it. The first thing I learned from building the Instameet community was that you have to keep building even when no one shows up. The first Instameet we held in Manhattan, one person came, and over the course of the next 2 years, we grew it to about 60 people that would come regularly to learn photography techniques and how to shoot and edit. And I even met my wife there, so community is great. The second thing I learned from community building is that you should give people free coffee every once in a while. They will come back time and time again. We did that regularly for the Instameet community. But it also makes them feel grateful and thankful and that they're a part of something bigger. How do you start? It can seem daunting and really scary. It's definitely the hardest part because of the fear that no one will come or no one will show interest in my passion of starting this community or bringing this one together. But there is hope, and you should start with your passion always. The first thing I learned from building the co-working community was to start before you ever have a place to land. So we started having meetups at Blue Stem Bistro here in town, and it gave people a chance to create relationships and friendships before we ever started working together in one building. The second thing I learned from the co-working community was to give people ownership. We all share a 3,000 square foot building, and they see it as Josh's building, but I see it as their building, and I let them bring their own plants, move their furniture around, move our furniture around. And we really go to them with everything, which makes them keep coming back because they feel ownership. Why do people need community? The scariest thing about not having community is isolation. And that's why I've built these communities, is because I felt isolated in working from home. I felt isolated in the art community. And so in isolation, I love this quote. It says, "When we live in isolation, what we have is unavailable and what we have is unprocurable." There's lots of fears and doubts and lies that we can believe when we're by ourselves, but a lot of positivity and productivity when we're around others. At the core of community, all of us are wired for belonging. So we all have passions and interests and values, and those are meant to belong somewhere. They belong inside of us, but also they can make us come alive when we're around other people. We're also made for tacos and music and other fun stuff we showed in that picture. In community, you can really get inspired, but you can also share inspiration. So this is Dan. He was in our co-working community from New York, and while he was there, he was inspired to start a language software company that now is used around the world. You can also share and receive knowledge. This is our Manhattan entrepreneur community here in town, where it's a purely knowledge-based platform. The community, we come, we share knowledge, we gain knowledge, and it's grown to about 40 to 60 regulars since November. The fourth thing we can do in community is share and give resources. Stephen was in our Instameet community, and he really showed me that the gear that I have, the equipment, the time, money, whatever I have is meant to be shared and given to others. He was really grateful for that, and it's something that I won't forget in community. The fifth thing that we get out of community is support. So much like the isolation, when we're with other people, we can be support to them, and they can be support to us. And that can be in work, in life, the hard times, the good times, and it really makes us become a better version of ourselves. So I encourage everyone to look around. In Manhattan, there's a million community organizations and movements, and if there isn't something that fits your passion, maybe it's a woodworking club or something that just doesn't exist yet, I encourage people to either be believers or supporters for those communities that are trying to start, or if you're a starter, like myself, then start. It is scary, like I said, but start with someone that you know that maybe shares a similar passion, and they can really help you get to the next step because they might know another person, and they know another person. And then at the end of the day, communities need believers and supporters, but they also need activators. Those are the starters. Those are the people that I believe we need more of because communities thrive with activators. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to this one thing. We are all one vast need and must avoid the extremes of saying, I am not needed and I don't need you. So this is about half of our fellow co-working community now. And just about all these people didn't know each other before they joined. And now they're babysitting each other's kids. They're going out to lunch together, having girls' nights. And that's a really cool thing. So thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, our next speaker is Palma Holden. She's going to be talking on the magic of in the everyday. Palma Holden is an active member of the Manhattan Toastmasters Club, a UFM mindfulness instructor and wellness instructor, and a loving guide for others. She holds a master's degree in education from Kansas State University. Palma offers intuitive, holistic guidance in person and by phone through her business Bright Light Consulting. She works with people and even pets, helping them gain insight, release stress, and feel better. Palma hails from the hustle and bustle of Queens, New York, but she has found her spiritual center in Kansas. She enjoys the quiet beauty of the Flint Hills, hiking the Little Apple with her husband, Richard Penner, and their elderly husky, Spreezy, and capturing the beauty and magic of connectedness reflected through her cell phone camera, which she's using here tonight, and an open heart. With that, let's welcome Palma Holden.
Thank you. We're naturally drawn to places that make us feel good, Wildcat Park west on Anderson Avenue is one of those places. My husband Rich and I love hiking with our husky Spreecy. And this particular day, the clouds seem to playfully mimic the stop sign. Same day, moments later, what appears to the left of the clouds and the stop sign is something different. I ask Rich what he sees, and he enthusiastically replies, husky. These bright lights appeared twice for me at Wildcat Park. The first time I couldn't see them. The second time they were visible through a friend's viewfinder. She had a tripod and a fancy camera, and we went out there and looked. I was tickled later when I went back a month later to check my cell phone, and there they were on my camera. The beauty of Natalie's Creek and Wildcat Park doesn't ever disappoint, regardless of when we visit. To create this ethereal winter splendor, I simply added a tinge of blue to my cell phone photo. How often do we get a still photo of a moving winged creature? Not often enough. This beautiful black dragonfly held onto a stick that was nestled between rocks at Natalie's Creek. I kept zooming in and snapping and eventually captured this view. The verdant plains of Kansas. Who knew? I was a Queens, New York girl. It took me a decade to appreciate and understand the topography of the prairie. Eventually, I found my spiritual center in Kansas. Beneath a small, arched, lovely walking bridge at Sealy Mansion lies this lily pond. Although it's shallow, I was mesmerized staring into its seemingly endless depth. Dorian Virtue, author of Healing with the Fairies, published by Hay House, believes every tree has a living spirit, and every tree's spirit has a face. Can you see the faces in these trees? Neat. A friend to many in Northeast Kansas, Stephanie used to play her crystal bowls at the ECM Center when it was on Denison Avenue, the Ecumenical Center. Afterward, we'd sit or we'd lay on blankets and meditate in silent meditation. It seems these vibrational energies were also blissing out on the vibrations of the chakras. I love taking pictures of this cottonwood from my backyard. Gazing through the cell phone, all looks dark, yet very simply choosing the edit function to brighten, and suddenly this photo reveals the light we know is there. Beneath the darkness on a different night, I found these orbs resting in the cottonwood. Or are they dust particles? Fabulous orbs sitting in a tree, Kissing, kissing the night sky. Wow. Here's a robust, youthful Spreecy soaking in the daylight rays of our backyard, superimposed over senior Spreecy, sleeping outside amidst the fuzzy evening fog. I do recommend going out and photographing in all kinds of weather. It's quite magical. Zooming in, all becomes even quieter, more foggy, less solid, and yet more expansive, until all that remains are light fractals of pure energy. Rich's nephew Tucker is opening gifts 1 minute and photobombing us the next. He's moving so fast, he's not even solid. Just pure light. Kids really can move at lightning speed. I think we're stuck. Oh, no, we're not. Wamego City Park is another favorite place of mine to take photographs. Home to huge pink boulders, millions of years old, statues gracing land and pond. Photographing these nubby tree roots never disappoints. Here I spy a little buckethead figure and maybe a lady. Our perceptions are a function of perspectives, which originate from our beliefs and experiences. When I was 3, my dad gave me a treasured coconut head from the World's Fair. It looked like a monkey. And of course, in school, I learned a lot about Abe Lincoln. I've been carrying 2 photos of my folks around since they departed 3 days apart in July of 2016. Again, another day after their passing at Wamego Park, it sure looks like I captured perhaps my dad's head, my mother's head, and maybe a little Judy Garland, which was my mother's favorite. She's popular in Wamego at the Wizard of Oz Museum. This is my sister Christine to the left of my mom. Her heart light appeared on this picture while we were getting ready for my dad's service. My sister scanned 2 photos, only one showed up with this light. I feel like my mother sends me hearts all the time. I snuck a peek at this beauty, not at the last total eclipse, but one before that. I was out front and I just sort of could tell where it was, and then I looked away and snapped. Sometimes you just have to go for it, even in the midst of an eclipse. The phrase namaste means the light in me recognizes and honors the light in you. It's been my honor to express our shared beauty, essence, and light tonight. Namaste.
Thanks, Palma. Okay, next up is Jeffrey Hicks. Jeffrey is going to be talking to us about science, engineering, and math. He has degrees in mathematics, physics, and engineering. And after working as an engineer graduate student, he decided to transition into teaching so he could have a more direct and sincere impact on those around him. In his spare time, he enjoys cooking delicious food and baking scrumptious pastries. He occasionally does an engineering project, whether it's with wood, metal, or fabric, proselytizing about how math is not bad or evil, and of course devoting time with his wife to taking care of their evil overlord of a puppy. So with that, I will introduce to you Jeffrey Hicks.
Okay, so good evening, first off. Second off, I tend to oversimplify things, so that's what I'm going to try to do, is share with you my oversimplification of how engineering, science, and math all roll together. To do this, we're going to start off with engineering, then go to science, then go to math, and then work our way backwards from math to engineering with an example. So the first question that took me forever to actually figure out, despite going to school for it, is what do engineers do? It turns out engineers build things using models. Models is the important bit, but we'll get to that in a second. An example of a model, although selling it a bit short, is gravity. So I drop something, it falls, that's a model. So what you learn in engineering school is model after model after model, which is why I got bored and then went to the math and physics department. But the reason they do this, I later realized, was not so that you can learn models, but so that you can sort of develop a intuition so that you can actually go out into the world and solve things. Because the problem you run into is the models they teach you in school don't really prepare you any at all for what you actually encounter in the real workplace. It's usually fuzzier, much more complicated, or just straight up scary, whatever it is you're trying to actually solve in the workplace. And so, if you're a good engineer, what you have to do is balance your constraints with your resources. You have to know the limitations of the models you have and all the other tools so that you can then leverage them to come up with a solution and solve whatever problem it is you need to get done. So that then brings us to the modeling itself. And when it changes, there. Science is modeling. So the development and testing of models is basically all science is. And so, yeah. So science then basically can then feed into the other disciplines and that sort of thing. Now, there's a spectrum, of course, between the application and the development. Science and engineering, you have engineers who do more research and scientists who do more applied, but that sort of thing. So, an example would be sociologists model how groups of people behave, and psychologists model how individuals behave. Now, those don't have corresponding engineering, but they still have an applied side and a sort of research side. And then moving on, we have biologists who model how living things work, chemists who model everything, how the world works from the top down, physicists who model from the bottom up, and they meet in the middle. It's called physical chemistry. And then way, way, way off on one side, you have mathematicians. Because all they really do is study models for the sake of studying models. Which turns out to be handy, because they spend all sorts of time coming up with a very consistent, precise language to discuss things, so that way when you're trying to explain to your wife how capacitors work, you don't have to resort to analogies about jump ropes that end in small fights and you never bring up capacitors again. Anyways, but the thing I've learned in trying to talk about math is everyone seems to think it's evil. Truth is, it's not. But, so the two things we're going to cover. One, math is not arithmetic. You don't learn math to do computations because a computer will always do it better and faster than you. Don't try. Second, it's not there anymore, but mathematical aptitude is not genetic. If your parents suck at math, that is not an excuse for you to suck at math. I've had that one way too many times. Anyways, the whole purpose of math is actually logic. So you can learn how to go from one point to another in a consistent fashion, so that way you can solve problems. And the second point was basically it's like everything else, it's effort. The more effort you put in, the more you know. So, now, the real other advantage of math is it connects everything together. Because secretly, mathematicians are lazy and always want to figure out a shorter way to do something. However, they're obsessive about how many short ways they can find, and so they end up doing more work than necessary. And, since I'm not allowed to tell jokes at home, you get a joke. Topologists are quite silly because they think that a coffee cup and a donut are the same thing. Okay, judging by the laughter, you don't know what topology is or get the joke. So, a topologist is someone... Don't worry about this, we'll get there. A topologist is someone who deals with geometry and how it transforms. So if you take a coffee cup and you stretch the bottom up and then you wrap it around a handle, it looks like a donut. Hence, they're the same thing. So, to the example side of things, because, yeah, no one likes my jokes. Anyways, to the example side of things, we're basically going to go over a speaker and acoustics. But we'll have to cover this while it's here. So, we're going to start with math. There's a mathematical theorem called Tilligan's theorem, which is way overpowered for this purpose. But it basically says, so long as you have certain conservation laws, any system can be replaced with any other system. So, in this case, you can have communication over a string or radio waves. Doesn't matter. It's still communication. Okay, back to the example. So, what this means for us is, in building a speaker, you can take the acoustics and you can model it as either a mechanical system or as an electrical system. So the way the air vibrates in reaction to how the speaker moves it, you can match them together and run them all as the same thing. Same thing happens for the mechanical part. The driver that is physically moving back and forth to move the air, you can re-represent all of that physical, mechanical, massive stuff as an electrical circuit. And then once you represent it as a circuit, and you represent the acoustics as a circuit, you can then combine everything into a single giant electrical circuit. And once it's all electrical, you can then use all of the tools that electrical engineers have come up with to develop and process things, of which there are quite a few. Now, the whole reason you want to combine all of these things into one is so that way you can save a whole bunch of time and money. There we go. Time and money. Because now you can model it without actually having to build it. In the end, you only have to build one, maybe two prototypes, and you're done. But really, the more important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is you can get electrical and mechanical engineers talking to each other because they're really solving the same problem. Electrical engineers happen to call it circuit theory, and mechanical engineers call it controls. But it's the same. Anyways, so hopefully I've convinced you that math is not evil, and given you a slight overview of how math, science, and engineering all fit together. For me, it was useful because I went in as an engineer, but I probably should have gone in as a scientist because I really like that better, but So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeffrey. Get out of here. There we go. Next up is Jessica Canfield. Jessica is a registered architect and an associate professor of landscape architecture at Kansas State University. Her teaching and research focus on improving the social dimensions and environmental performance of urban public spaces. She's particularly interested in understanding the relationship between how landscapes look and how they function. What she loves most about being a designer is the ability to create places that can shape memories, enrich people's lives, and contribute to an improved environment. So with that, let's welcome Jessica Canfield.
Landscape architect. Sorry, I had to correct. It's a big difference to me. All right. Okay. Concern for human health and environmental decline has generated a need for healthier communities, of which parks and public spaces are an essential component. They provide places for people to recreate and socialize, and opportunities for physical and mental renewal. When designed in concert with natural systems, parks can improve degraded environmental conditions as well. The idea for public parks in the U.S. first came from Europe. In 1847, Birkenhead Park in Liverpool, England opened. It's said to be the first publicly funded and first professionally designed urban park in the world. At 143 acres, it included meandering walkways, manicured lawns, and picturesque ponds. Frederick Law Olmsted, founding father of landscape architecture in America, visited Birkenhead in 1850. He was greatly influenced the design and realized that America was lacking such landscapes where art, beauty, and amenity combined. Drawing on lessons from Birkenhead, he went on to design some of the country's greatest parks, including Central Park and Boston's Fens. Olmsted advocated for parks as necessary refuges from the ills of everyday urban life. Seeking contrast to the hard city, his sublime park designs blended passive recreation elements alongside picturesque scenery. Through tremendous vision and craft, his designs transformed derelict urban sites into beautiful functional amenities. Though the social functions and recreational needs of urban landscapes have changed over the past 150 years, many visual attributes, including well-manicured lawns, curvilinear paths, and water features, have remained the same. But this traditional norm of the park typology is not necessarily green. Its appearance does not mean it's environmentally healthy. But in 21st century park design, there has been a major shift to better respond to environmental needs. By celebrating the site's inherent conditions, many new parks prioritize environmental performance over appearance, with designs that are more contextually appropriate, less resource consumptive, and offer a more naturalized aesthetic. So beauty. The beauty of landscapes comes beyond the aesthetics when we recognize the larger set of hidden contributions that these places are making to our public and public spaces. They provide numerous social, environmental, and economic benefits, adding value to citizens and the environment alike. In terms of social benefits, parks and public spaces can impact our health and safety and provide important recreational and cultural value. Though the social benefits often receive less attention than environmental and economic benefits, they are nonetheless a critical component in a prosperous community and must be a vital consideration of design. Studies have shown that contact with nature has many health benefits. Specifically, people with access to nearby natural settings have been found to be healthier overall than other individuals. Being outdoors can help reduce mental fatigue, relieve feelings of stress, both of which have positive effects on mood. For children, parks are especially important. Unstructured outdoor play can improve the classroom behavior, self-esteem, and lessen anxiety. Time spent in nature may decrease symptoms of ADD and increase higher motor function and concentration. Many schools across countries are including nature play into students' daily schedules. A landscape's environmental benefits are perhaps the most valuable and far-reaching. Parks and public spaces can be designed to restore blighted sites, manage stormwater runoff, improve water quality, restore native plant communities, create new habitat, improve air quality, and lessen energy and resource use. For example, the design goal of the Hutan Wetland Park in Shanghai, China, was to transform the derelict contaminated river into a functional wetland park. Able to cleanse and improve water quality, this landscape is lush with vegetation, seating, and gathering features. It provides citizens with a beautiful public space amenity where they can go to escape city life. Parks and public spaces add economic value. Studies have shown that residential property values are typically higher when adjacent to a park or open space. In business districts, trees have been shown to not only create a more attractive environment, but improve the economic prosperity of adjacent businesses. And located in downtown Boston, Central Wharf Plaza is a really good example of how underutilized private space can be transformed into an attractive asset for adjacent businesses and citizens alike. With the addition of trees, planters, and seating and lighting, the site has become a popular destination and a catalyst in the city's Inner Harbor waterfront area. So when it comes to the creation of parks and public space, design matters, and beyond the pure visual. Our choices about form, materials, and plants can greatly impact overall function and the quality of our daily lives, provide necessary ecosystem services, and enhance the image of our city. We need to think about multifunctionality and how best to combine infrastructure with amenity. Here at Westerly Creek Park in Denver, Colorado, a neighborhood stormwater drainage system was designed as an open space greenway where people can come walk, ride bikes, skateboard, relax, or even bird watch in a natural setting within the heart of the city. We must carefully consider plant selection. By using native species, landscapes can help support important pollinator insects like bees. Plant choice can also help eliminate the need for chemical applications and regular mechanical maintenance. Here at K-State's Beach Museum Meadow, prairie species not only create aesthetic delight, but help infiltrate stormwater runoff, lessening impacts downstream. We must value and celebrate public space. Trees play an important role in urban landscapes. Understood to be cities' green lungs, trees not only sequester carbon and intercept stormwater, they make sidewalks more comfortable by providing shade and a pleasing aesthetic. Here in Canada, a road was narrowed and sidewalk expanded to make more space for pedestrians. We must be strategic. When given the opportunity to rethink everyday urban landscapes, bold and brave ideas can have a big impact. Seen here in the town of Normal, Illinois, when pedestrians are prioritized over vehicles, we can reclaim underutilized spaces and transform into places for gathering, joy, play, and celebration. So as communities strive to become healthier, design landscapes will undoubtedly play an important role. As you've seen throughout this presentation, parks and public spaces can be dynamic places for recreation, relaxation, entertainment, learning, and delight. And they can be designed to address concern for environment and natural resources. Truly a hidden beauty.
Thank you for those words from our landscape architect. Last up tonight is Carmen Schober, who will be speaking to us. And let me get her slides up here. All right. Carmen Schober is a passionate writer, mentor, and professional goal coach. In February 2016, Carmen founded the Million to One Club, which is a powerful support network for people who want to set goals, smash goals, and then repeat. Carmen holds a bachelor's and master's degrees in English literature and creative writing. She has served as an instructor in the English department at K-State for 3 years and as the coordinator for K-State First. She also served as the editor-in-chief of Touchstone, which is the university's literary arts magazine. During her time at K-State, she worked closely with students as a teacher and mentor. And currently she serves as a part-time writing and specialist for the Educational Support Services. She writes short fiction, novels, nonfiction, screenplays, and freelance pieces. Her stories have been featured in Hobart Pulp, Witness Magazine, Weekend Collective, and Yeah KC. Her work has also been recognized by the K-State Department of English and Glimmer Train. So with that, let's recognize Carmen Schober.
Thank you, Linda, for that lovely introduction. Sorry, I always feel awkward talking into microphones. I'm really excited to be here tonight to share my passion for goal setting and storytelling with you all. Oh, okay, good. Whew, I thought it started. As a goal coach and a writer, it's fun for me to think about the ways that these two interests intersect. And so I hope you'll find my insights helpful. Right. First question for you all. I'm going to get some extra time. All right. Who here has seen Rocky, the movie? Okay, that is usually the case. So Rocky is my favorite movie of all time, and my favorite part of Rocky is the very end, which most people also remember. At the end of Rocky, he's just lasted 15 rounds with Apollo Creed. He's very bloodied up, you know. But he's still standing, and he calls out for his girlfriend, Adrian. Adrian! That's the part that most people remember. But specifically, he says, "Yo, Adrian, I did it." And it's this very inspiring moment in film, and it kind of solidified Rocky as this ultimate underdog character. But what a lot of people don't know is that that is actually not the original ending to Rocky. When Stallone wrote Rocky as a screenplay, in the first version, he actually has Rocky throw that fight with Apollo, meaning someone approaches Rocky, pays him a bunch of money to lose on purpose. Rocky takes it, he loses, and then he and Adrian just kind of fade into obscurity together, and he buys her a pet shop, and it's just mildly bitter about everything that happened. So it's a very, very different ending, a lot darker, and honestly, for what is supposed to be an inspiring sports movie, it's possibly like the worst ending ever. Thank goodness Stallone decided to change that, or we would not have the movie that we know and love today. And I tell you all of this because I think that we can learn a lot about goals from those two very different endings. And specifically what we learn is that goals make all the difference when it comes to telling an inspiring, impactful story. In the first version that Stallone wrote, Rocky did not know what he wanted, which was why he could give up very easily. But in the second version, the one that we know and love, he gave Rocky a goal, and that dramatically changed his story. So we'll come back to Rocky's goal in just a moment, because I want to talk about our unhappy endings. I personally believe that we're all telling a story with our lives, but a lot of us are kind of like the first Rocky, the original Rocky. We don't have a clear goal. And this is really a problem because a story without a goal is not inspiring to us or to other people. And I'll explain what I mean. As a writer, having written a screenplay and not a novel and some other things, sitting down and trying to tell a good story, I've learned that if a character doesn't want something, it's almost impossible to tell a good story. The story will come across as boring and pointless. Similarly, if you have an underwhelming goal, maybe your character just wants to get a pizza, which is a good thing to want, but it's not an exciting goal, your story will not capture anyone's attention or their heart. Their goal has to be compelling and exciting. And this is because, on some level, we all know that there has to be a struggle, right, to really feel satisfied and inspired by the ending. It can't be too easy for the character. The character has to fight for something. We can't have an unearned reward. So we know what doesn't work. We know that undetermined goals, underwhelming goals, and unearned rewards do not lead to these really satisfying, inspiring stories. So you might be wondering, what does make for a good story? What is a great goal? And I think it can be summed up in the idea of challenge. So this next picture, there it is, of me. That was taken last summer in Oregon. I'm about to do like the scariest thing I've ever done, which was walk on a tightrope through treetops, which I don't really like heights, so it was a stretch for me. But I wanted to do it because I wanted to see if I was brave enough. And when I did it, I was inspired to do even more. And this is what happens when we set challenging, clear goals. And that's why we can learn so much from Rocky. When Rocky decided on a goal, the ending of his story changed dramatically. He went from aimless and unhappy to determined and inspiring. So how can we set goals like Rocky? I think the first thing is we have to find inspiration. Rocky wanted to last 15 rounds in the ring with Apollo Creed, which was something no one had ever done before. So it was a big, exciting goal, and it was challenging enough to make him push himself further than he would have gone otherwise. Additionally, we have to find structure. If you're familiar with the storytelling mechanics at all, you know that most stories operate in 3 acts. Act 1 sets up the story, Act 2 is a lot of obstacles and conflict, and Act 3 is the resolution. And Rocky is no different. He decides he doesn't want to be a bum, he trains really hard, and he fights the good fight. And then lastly, you have to build support for your goals. Rocky couldn't have achieved his goal on his own. He needed his coach, Mick, and just like all great characters, they typically need a guide. If you think of Dumbledore and Gandalf and everyone in between, great characters need great guides. So with all that in mind, I just have a couple questions for you to consider. Rocky's story was inspiration, structure, and support. If you look in your most beloved movies and books, you'll find those 3 elements at play there too. So my first question is, why are our goals confined to 1 month a year? If we're telling a story with our lives, then our goals should transcend the month of January, in my opinion. Additionally, my second slightly deeper question for you is, what great goal is determining the course of your life and your happy ending? And I thought I'd end with this quote from Stallone. I'm a fan, in case you haven't noticed. He says, if you don't have a mountain, build one and then climb it. And after you climb it, build another one. Otherwise, you start to flatline in your life. We know this to be true from our favorite stories. The characters we love are the ones with great goals and who are willing to fight for a happier ending. Thank you. I messed it up, sorry.
All right. That concludes our presentations for this evening. So if all of our speakers would like to turn around, we have a microphone. Do we have a microphone? Yes, we have a microphone here available. Does anybody have a question that they'd like to ask one of our speakers?
And I'll. Okay, so if you have a question, if you could kind of just line up. I
Just
think
kind of let us know and come on. And
we ran around with it last year.
Move that way, guys.
on camera.
I thought you were pointing at me. Yeah, if anybody has a question, if you could line up here, I think that would be easier. We tried running around last time, and I'm afraid we missed some people. So.
There's a question. Come on over.
Hi. I know you guys all covered pretty expansive topics. What challenges were there in condensing such deep topics into 7 minutes?
That was crazy for me. I'm giving a class through UFM this Saturday on beekeeping, bees to extracting the honey and hives. I can do that 3 hours without notes. So getting that whole process down, that was crazy.
I wanted to tell a whole lot of stories in mind, but I just had to get it right to the point and kind of figure out what the most important things were. And once I got that, then it was a lot easier.
Similarly, it just was tricky. I had to just keep practicing with the timing of it and figure out what photos I wanted to show and then what I wanted to say about them and how to actually connect with the audience. Very tricky.
I only told one joke, so it saved me a lot of time. No, I had to start with sort of the outline, and then I had one sentence per slide and went out from there. And she went the opposite route.
Yeah, I crammed a lot in. Once a professor, always a professor. I started by just making the images, and then I wrote the script at the very end. So I'm a visual person, and so I had to think about telling the story with images and then adding the text later.
These are all very good answers. I think for me, I just like to talk a lot. So, reining it in. And also, we're all kind of passionate about our subjects. And so I think for me, I could say a lot. And so it's about kind of finding the principle and making the principle clear.
Any other questions?
I had a question for Josh. When you were talking about the different types of people in a community, the last one you mentioned was activator, and I didn't really catch what the meaning, what you were getting at there. And if you could just backtrack and talk about the types of roles in a community, I'd appreciate that, including the activator. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. An activator that I was kind of showing up there would be someone that spurs others on, kind of get them going, get them seeing the vision. Sometimes people don't fully understand it, like our co-working space. A lot of people didn't know what that means. There wasn't one here. And so as the activator, my role as the activator with the fellow is keep sharing the vision, keep explaining to people, whether they listen or not, whether they see it or not, and be creative in those roles. Think about outside the box ways of how to excite people or encourage people. So that's what I meant by activator. A starter, similar role as if something doesn't exist and you think it needs to. That's all I need to start something. It's kind of my wife is laughing because she thinks I start too many things, but I just see maybe a hole or a need, and I start it without fear, and that's a good and a bad place to be, but that's the starter role I was talking about. Believers and supporters in the community is what you need as a part of the community, so finding people who share similar passion or value or interest for that, because they'll be your biggest champions. And so when you bring all those things together, and I see many in this room who played a part in the Insta-Meet, in the fellow, all of these different things, who were those roles. The guy in the KC hat was the first guy that showed up to the Insta-Meet that I talked about. One person came. He was the one. So you need all those things, and those are the four that I see. So thank you.
I don't walk in front of the camera. There we go. I enjoy this very much. Very different, all of you, okay? But I had a good time. It's great. And I'm fascinated by bee study. And wanted to ask you, because I had read something about, I'm standing in front of you now. I had read something about there being a decline, a serious decline in bees, and a lot of people getting very concerned. It seems that they are very sensitive to environmental products and things like that. Are you aware of what is being done to kind of help keep our bees alive?
There's a lot of bees around, or a lot of beekeepers. Manhattan just started a club 4 years ago. We typically have about 150 paid members. I was president a couple years ago. The biggest challenges for bees, number one, is this varroa mite. It's like a tick. If it was on a person, it would be the size of a dinner plate. So imagine what life is like with that. I said I know weird facts about bees. Those mites are carrying about 20 different diseases, different viruses. So we have that going on. Those were introduced to the U.S. Then you have loss of habitat. We have grass. Bees don't go to grass. Bees don't go to wheat. A lot of those things. They're losing their habitat. We don't have dead, hollow trees around the neighborhoods. They're cut down, you plant a new tree. The other thing is pesticides. We have a lot of pesticide use. So it's a big combination of things. A few years ago, they had colony collapse disorder where the bees had everything they needed, just died, collapsed. That was it. Now they're finding that some of those other elements are kind of contributing and trying to pick apart what parts are doing it. But that mite is one of the biggest ones. Then we have the almond industry in California that it's taking most of the bees from across the U.S. to get them over to California just to pollinate all those almonds. So we have all of our bees And then, a large percentage of them are going to one place all at one time. So everything spreads around there, or they deal with that. So there's a lot of things going on, but we have a lot of awareness and trying to get grassroots things. They say the best bees are the ones that you have around you. Try to encourage those survivors. So.
Question?
So would you recommend we just plant lots of flowers wherever we can?
Yes.
Any specific flowers?
Yes. Simple flowers. They need to be able to get their little mouths into it. So frilly things, like a carnation, they can't get their mouth in it. So simple flowers. Clover, of course, is number one. So dandelions. Dandelions are great stuff. Beekeepers can pick out that bright orange pollen coming in March and go, woo, dandelions. So don't kill your dandelions. You are saving the bees. So that's very important. And clover. If I have a patch of clover, maybe a low spot in my yard, I will mow around that patch of clover. Let it go. I got bees on it. I'm saving bees. Bees provide 1/3 of your food. So that's the biggest thing that you can do. So thank you.
Kind of a follow-up to the first question we had was a little bit about how you did it. I'm a little interested in why you did it. How did you come about deciding to take that challenge on?
Because UFM is a great organization. Like I said, I've taken classes through them. I've taken Carmen's class. Because of her, I now run 5Ks, and I'm working towards the Bill Snyder half marathon this year. I'm not a runner. And UFM has great classes. So when they ask, hey, can you do this? Yes.
My why is, I touched on it in the presentation, but just that I believe that communities thrive when there's more people starting more things and bringing everyone together. So that's my personal why, and that's why I chose this topic and this platform was to maybe encourage other people and start more things, new things, and bring more people together.
Well, I've just been really fascinated with what's been showing up in my photographs. And I thought, well, if I'm fascinated, maybe others are too.
I have two things. Nepotism. My wife works here at the library. And the engineering to teacher transition, I went through a lot of, what is it called? Self-discovery. That's a good way to phrase it. And in the long list of things I want to do, I'm going to have to actually get out and rally up support for things that I want to get done. So I figured I should start somewhere. So yes, math is not evil.
Well, I've spent 9 years talking to my students about this topic, and they're sick of hearing from me. So I thought I'd try a new audience.
That's a good question. I think for me, any opportunity I get to possibly inspire people and help people get excited about goals and think about goals in their own life and my secret life mission is to make goals a part of everyday life. So any opportunity I get to talk about it, I usually try to take it.
I'll be right after you.
So Carmen, what do you do when you fail at a goal? Like say you set a goal, you're going to do something every day and then you forget one day.
It's a good question. So I've actually never failed a goal. Just kidding. Just kidding. That would be crazy. But recently, since I've started the Million to One Club and identified as a goal coach and work as a goal coach, I haven't given up on any of my goals. So that would be the disclaimer there of not having failed one, because I haven't given up on any goals that I've set in the last 3 years. But that said, sort of daily goals, sit down and write for 4 hours at a time or something like that. When that happens, I give myself a pep talk. I celebrate the small things that I've been able to do, and then I usually do better the next day. So it's not goals designed to crush your spirit for setting goals. we have rules in the 1,000,000 to 1 class, and one of the rules is to be realistic. You're not going to be perfect, but on the flip side, you can do a lot more than you think you can, oftentimes. So, very good question.
Hello, I just wanted to say thank you for coming out and speaking about your topics. It's always really invigorating to know all this is going on in such a small area. I grew up in Los Angeles and everything's just bombarded, but here it's just amazing to really meet and hear all these stories. Actually, my daughter, a little one here, had a question for the beekeeper, and then I'll follow up with my question.
Why do you need to know about bees?
Because bees, they pollinate about 1/3 of our food. Like the almond trees, only honeybees can pollinate them. No other pollinators can do it. Apples, about 75% of that pollination comes from honeybees. So some of the foods that we really, really love, now they also pollinate broccoli. The other pollinators do it too. So, without bees, you can probably still have broccoli if you want, because it's awesome. But yeah, we need them for our food and to keep everything going for us.
Thank you.
And honey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So I had a question with the landscaping engineer. So you addressed a lot of environmental concerns and how we're trying to go greener. What are some of the cooperations that you do with other scientists? Because I know it's not just one type of person. You need to gather a lot of different engineers and everything else. How do you kind of address those topics?
Yeah, so one of the projects that I showed you, the meadow at the K-State Beach Museum, we actually did an interdisciplinary study to try to quantify and measure the actual benefits of that landscape. And so it was a team of us landscape architects. We worked with Dr. Stacy Hutchinson, who is a biological and agricultural engineer. We worked with an entomologist, hydrologist, ecologist, all of the ologists, but people that are well versed in plants and ecology and water, and it really takes a community to design these places. It takes a vision, but it takes a team of people to actually get it into the ground and then continue to function after it's been implemented. Mm-hmm.
Palma, I appreciate seeing your photography. I have a question about it. Do you work, oh, hi. Do you take your camera, well, you use your phone, but do you use other cameras when you go out? Do you just take them with you, hoping to catch something, or do you go out looking for something?
I started out with a small digital camera and then worked up to the cell phone. I have the intention of connecting, so I do have that connection, that intention, sort of what can I see, what can I find, what's there, uncovering. So I feel like I'm communicating with nature, with spirit in that way. But I have my favorite places where it just feels good. We all have our favorite places where the energy feels good. So those are the places I focus on. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
One of the things is, I wonder the oddities that most people wouldn't connect with your area, that you find that when you tell people that they're surprised that there's a connection to that. What would that be in each one of your areas?
Almonds 100% need honeybees. Okay, honeybees are the only insect that produce food for humans.
You can eat them, but they produce.
the connection is similar to how I answered the last one is, we all feel energy, we all sense it, and this is just a different way it shows up. It shows up for us differently.
I mean, to be entirely honest, I can think of a very long list of things that most people don't connect with what I do, but we'll save that for later. Back when I was an engineer, I studied microcavitation, which is little tiny bubbles that implode when you have hundreds of atmospheres of pressure on them. That falls under the category of mechanical engineering. Who knew?
Landscape architects don't just design your yards. In fact, I have never designed a yard. I have only ever designed public spaces. So,
I think kind of the entire purpose of my presentation was to get across how two seemingly disparate things, goals and storytelling, go together. But really, interestingly enough, in all the things that I've done as a writer, as a teacher at K-State, as a coordinator at K-State, I see the goals and stories working together powerfully in all those settings. So I think they're just the impact that they make on the trajectory of a person's life or a committee's purpose or whatever the case may be is missed oftentimes. Good question. Hard question. Deep thoughts.
Hi, this question's more directed to Josh. How did you handle the growth of from one person to the fellow within that? It's been a small amount of time. And then also, how do you get free coffee at any type of community meetup that you're trying to set up?
The coffee was free to all of them. So, the coffee was free to all of them. I was in college when we started that in 2013, but I wanted friends to hang out with me and learn photography or shoot with their phone or camera. So I paid for all of their coffee. I did that 2 or 3 times, and yes, it got up to 45, 60 people, and I started talking to the owner of the coffee shop and said, hey, can we a little discount, or, we're bringing all these people in. But no, we found ways. We paid for it for them because they enjoyed it, and it was good coffee. And I think a lot of us, even with Thanksgiving a few months ago, when you share a meal or when you share coffee, a lot of that time is really good. It's connection time. So I thought that would be a really important way to start the Insta-Meet at a coffee shop over coffee and let conversations happen, let friendships happen. So when we disperse and we go out, then you start to pair off with people that you might get along with and learn something from them. The fellow, that growth, the coffee shop, when we started, we weren't actually working together, but we were sharing ideas and dreaming together. We're coming up on 2 years now with that, and the space is about full, so we're looking at how to grow with that. So far, we built all of the furniture on wheels, so we can have events in rooms like this and roll everything out in the hallway, break fire code, and have a big party so people can have their events and let their businesses grow. So just get really creative, I think, is the idea in anything, and make a few sacrifices. So.
Okay, well, thanks so much to our presenters. It takes some courage to be up here and talk as quickly and think as quickly as they did with 20 slides. So thank you so much for doing that. And thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate that so much. UFM is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, which is pretty amazing to us that a small organization such as ours could make it for 50 years. And as part of that celebration, we're doing special events all year. Our next event will be the 1968 Film Festival, which will start every Tuesday night in February here in the Grossbeck Room from 6 to 8:30 p.m. There's a flyer on the back that talks about what the lineup for the movies is. And we'd love to have you come and enjoy the movie, talk about it, have some refreshments, play some trivia, and just have a good time sharing as part of UFM celebration. So please, before you go, join us for some refreshments and some conversation. And again, thank you to the Manhattan Library Association for providing that. And lastly, thank you for our presenters tonight. Thank you all for coming and have a good evening.